Hello chess lovers, let's have a look at the game played at the unofficial official random world championship match between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. Nakamura, who had white pieces, started with e4 and c5 by Magnus Carlsen, Sicilian defense, just kidding. d4, c takes d4 and rook takes d4. Actually this rook on d4 square looks very amusing. d6, c4, we see the Marcosi bind, b5, knight b3, wait, where did this knight come from? Ah, from a1 square, knight b3, knight c6. This is what happens when you're developing your rook so early. Black is developing his knight with a tempo. Rook d1, b takes c4, bishop takes c4, knight b6, bishop e2, g6. Looks like Carlsen is going for dragon variation. Bishop c3, f6. Well, bishop g7 is of course also playable, but Carlsen decided to keep alive the dark square bishop and he played f6 with the intentions of developing the light square bishop on f7 square. h4. Now, white has both intentions of pushing the h-pawn further and also to activate the rook, and after h5, once this pawn is stopped, Nakamura places the rook on h3 square, activating the rook. Bishop f7, rook g3, knight e5, bishop takes e5, d takes e5, and rook c3, gaining the total control over the c file. Rook takes d1, queen takes d1, queen a8, knight d2, bishop h6, and rook c7. The rook is instantly penetrating the 7th rank. Queen b8, but of course black's position is very solid. Queen c2, of course capturing on e7 is very dangerous because after bishop f8, white's rook will be trapped. That's why we see queen c2 and black castles kingside. Well, this looks crazy. Anyway, bishop a6, bishop takes d2, knight takes d2, rook d8, knight f1, rook d7, getting rid of this active rook on the 7th rank. Knight takes d7, bishop c4, queen d6, knight e3, queen d4, and b4. At some point, white can give a try and get a passed pawn on the queen side. Knight b6, and we see the exchange of light square bishops. Queen b3 check, king f8, queen b1, protecting the pawn on e4, knight c8. The knight is coming to attack the pawn on e4, that's why we see knight f1, and after knight d6, knight g3, knight b5, a3, and queen c4. Well, as you have noticed, the pawn on a3 is hanging, but if knight takes a3, then after queen c1, queen takes b4, white can get a pretty counterplay on the king's side. If king f7, then queen h7 check, and then win the pawn on g6 square. Nothing wrong with white's position. This is going to be an equal battle. That's why after a3 we see queen c4, queen d1. White wants to activate his queen, knight d4. In the middle part of the game, Nakamura's position was somewhat active, but later we could see that Carlsen managed to convert the game upside down, and now his pieces are of course more active. Queen d2, the queen wants to penetrate black's camp, king g7, king h2, queen c2, queen e3, a6, f4, trying to create some counterplay on the king's side. Queen takes d4, f takes g3 check, king takes g3, queen b3 check, king h2, queen takes a3, queen c5. The queen is now starting to target the pawn on e7, and after king f8, using the vulnerability of black king, white is starting to give a perpetual check, and after queen c4 check, the players agreed to a draw. Well, if king g7, again the queen can stick to the pawn on e7, and of course this is going to end up in a draw. That's why after queen c4 check, draw was agreed. It will be also very interesting to know your opinion about this crazy 90-60 game. Waiting for your comments and questions. Good luck.